And we should be live. Hey chat, Happy New Year. It's been a very interesting 2021, I think, and I hope that everybody here has achieved a decent amount in that year. Because really, being locked down, I'm sure that a lot of people have been weighed down by the whole acedia and laziness of the lockdown. But at the same time, some of you might not have. Many of you might not have achieved things. Others may have. And I hope that this year is better so that we're better able to actually get to a point where we can properly develop as human beings. Because one of the things I hope for 2022 is that these lockdowns end and that we may get on with what we're supposed to be doing and, continually going onwards and upwards. That's something that I hope everyone gets around to. Could chat please type a 1 if I'm properly streaming, if you guys can all hear me? That would be really appreciated, because before I get into the meat of the content that we're going to be talking here now, I want to make sure that everyone's on board. Also, if you have chat questions, just stick them in the chat. Super chats are especially appreciated. If you just stick them in the chat, I'll get around to answering them after I've gone through the main content of the video. Why do you do this to me, Botman? Why do you do this to me, Botman? So, let's consider what a New Year's resolution ultimately is and really consider why we're actually doing them. Because we want to be better people, I think. I think everybody here wants to be a better person. That's why they decide, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, or I'm going to finish the Bible, or I'm going to do whatever. But really, I don't think that this is the correct way of approaching it. I think that there are better ways. Because, you see, the thing is that if you just have some mindless habit, you're not always going to have the reason why right there so you can access it. And so, what I want you guys to do, instead of thinking, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go to mass more, I'm going to go to pray more, I'm going to, meet a woman or something. Obviously, that's something you can't control, right? What I'd like you to do is, instead of that, what I want you guys to start thinking about is what kind of person you want to be at the end of the year. Well, this could be in 5 years if it's something big, or it could be the end of your lifetime. So, for this year, you could, you want to be a driver, right? So you do your driving test, get your driver's license, and get your car. Or you want to have a master's degree, so you finish your master's degree as it stands. You want to be a cook, so you make a resolution to develop those skills so that you can become a cook. Or over the course of 5 years, it could be something more complicated, like you want to be a theologian, you want to be a philosopher, you want to be a historian, you want to be managerial level staff at your company that you've just started at. Many of these different things. And also, I'd ask if you could share the stream so other people are watching this. It would be very much appreciated. And so, instead of framing it as, I'm going to read X amount of the catechism each day just because, what you want to sit down there and think is, okay, I want to know my faith properly, I want to be a faithful Catholic, for example. And so, therefore, because of that, I'm going to read the Bible, or something like that. I'm going to finish the Bible in a year. Or, I'm going to pray a rosary every day. Or, I'm going to finish the catechism. All manner of different things. I'm going to go to mass more than once a week. You first of all choose the identity that you want to fulfill, and then you choose the habits that you want to pick. So that's the first thing that you should start doing. What I want everyone in this chat to start doing is, rather than thinking about, what I'm going to do, think who I want to be. Now, after you've done this, which I'm sure many of you are now currently thinking about, it's going to take a while to develop, right? You're now thinking probably something along the lines of, how do I make that manifest in my life? So say you want to be a saint. How do you make that manifest? And this could go for everything as well. This could go for even material goals. What you do is you take an inventory of yourself. What do you currently have and what do you currently lack? So, for example, when it comes to being a saint, you might have a great degree of patience, but at the same time you might have a significant problem with arrogance. Say you want to save up and buy a family home. You might have a job that pays reasonably well, but at the same time you know that your country has a very high house price, and so you need to get a certain level of savings before you can get a house to mortgage on, right? That could be another thing that you want to do. You want to take a general inventory of yourself, and I would recommend either doing this on a piece of paper if that's your thing, or you could do this in a notepad program. Like, I would recommend getting either Atom or Notepad++, because the great thing about these two programs is that they have tabs, so you can have multiple text documents open at the same time. And that will be important later as we go through more of the video. So now you've taken this inventory of self, you know where you stand in terms of your virtues, vices, material possessions, relationships, etc. Then, and only then, do you start deciding what do you do. Because there's no sense deciding what you want to be based on what you are at the moment, unless it's like a serious blockage. There's no sense doing that, and there's no sense planning specific habits unless you know where you stand. For example, with the person I mentioned earlier on with the pride problem, right? There's no sense making plans as if you're already humble. But once you've had that, you have the ability to go and say, right, this is what habits I should be doing, or these are what goals I should be setting. And I read a book called Atomic Habits. Some of you might have heard of it, and the guy's very insistent on habits as opposed to goals. But really, I think that there is a utility to goals. But I suppose he would probably consider these to be short-term habits. But I'm going to make a distinction right here. The distinction is that I'm going to consider the first category to be habits, just simply considered, right? So if you have habits simply considered, this will be something like, you know, I want to pray the rosary every day. You're going to be doing that until you die. Or I want to read the Bible every day, same thing. Or gym, you know, you're going to be doing that 3 times a week until, you know, you're 60 and you're too unwell to do so. That might be an example, right? Maybe that's a bit pessimistic, but you know what I mean. And then in the other category, you have these very short-term goals, which are probably more time-bound and, you know, can fit into something like SMART goals. So that's like what specific, measurable, applicable, something in time-bound. So it's SMART. So let's call it SMART. I can't remember what R is. Repeatable, maybe? And that's where you want to do something like, I want to finish the catechism. I want to finish my master's degree. I want to, you know, carve this block of wood into a nice sculpture. Right? These are specific tasks that you can do very, very quickly and are probably more committed in terms of time than long-term goals. And so, what Atomic Habits recommends to do with these goals that are related to things that you do for the rest of your life, which directly touch your identity, is that you want to pick small ones and you want to plan specifically where you're going to do them. So what the author will recommend is that you're sat in your room at a particular time. Say you've gone to Mass in the morning. You'll say something like, when I come home from Mass, I will sit in my room and I will pray my rosary. For example, that will be one of the things that people, you know, you work through when you're sat down, and you can chain habits together. So after you've done your rosary, you can read the Bible, or I should probably hold this up to the camera. You can read your Bible, you can pray Psalms or whatever, right? And it's ideal if these things are easy to do, they're satisfying and they're quick. So if you do something that takes under 2 minutes, so like reading a chapter of the Bible a day, that's something pretty easy to do. Another thing would be to, you know, look into your plans for the future. That's pretty quick. That would be another thing to consider doing. With longer term things, it's a lot hard. I mean, rather, with larger things that need to be done more short term, it's a bit harder to do. Because, for example, say you want to read the Catechism in 2 weeks. That's going to take you a good hour of reading in a given day. And so you want to, like, that's going to take a lot more short term energy. So you're going to have to just put that and whack it away and just get it done like any assignment you would do at university. So you have this distinction made. So to refresh your memory for the people who've just joined, because I know that people are joining as I'm talking, and also if you want to add questions, please stick them in the chat, because this is going to be a kind of an AMA after I'm done with this. You want to decide who you are, where you stand, what you're going to do about it. And what you're going to do about it is going to be your goals and is going to be the habits that you want to instill long term. Now, two particular tools have been really, really useful to me for this, and that is having yearly, monthly, and weekly plans. So I have my yearly plan for what I want to be on the 31st of December 2022. That's a list of discrete roles that I want to fill. And then I have a list of tasks that this would entail across the year. Large tasks that don't really have much definition. And then you use the months to break that down into something more discrete. And then you use weeks to break that into something even more discrete. So I go, say I want to learn how to drive, right? I have my goal to learn how to drive, get a car, get insurance, etc. in 12 months, right? The first month is going to be, okay, I need to book driving lessons. Then the next couple of months is going to be, I'm going to do this lesson with this instructor on this day. And this can go for however long. And then you do your test. That's another discrete thing. And you just go through, and as you go by, you'll develop that habit. And that comes down to days eventually. When it comes to days, I found a really interesting little tool called Todoist. And it's basically like a checklist generator, right? So you type in, I want to pray a rosary every day, and it will recognize the everyday, and it will give you a web page, or you can make it a sheet of paper. One of the things that I like doing is printing it off, right? And it'll say, you have to pray the rosary today, and this acts as a reminder, so that in front of you, based on your weekly plans, monthly plans, and yearly plans, you have a daily sort of list of things to do. One of the things that I'd recommend really strongly as well is that you have this weekly, monthly, and yearly plan thing. You do it on like a set schedule, so you do it every Saturday for weeks, or the first day of the month for months, and you go through, and you have a habit on the Todoist app where you check these things every day to sort of get an idea of how what you're doing in the present time sort of stretches out and embraces the bigger picture. And this will only take you like 2 minutes, unless you want to go hyper complicated. And so, with all of that, that was actually my notes. I didn't end up, I didn't read them much. But I'm going to make this sort of the question and answer bit, I think. So, with that said, I hope you guys have great New Year's. I hope that that you're really clear on what you're doing. Maybe some of you aren't clear. Maybe we could make this a discussion in the chat. What is everyone going to be doing this year? What do you want to be by the 31st of December this year? Stick it in the chat and we'll discuss it. I can discuss a few of mine, actually, if that helps people think about it. Because I can see there being a situation where people are, you're on the 1st, you haven't really planned what you're going to do this year. What am I going to do? What do I wish to do with my time? So, let's see if there are any questions in the chat. Nothing just yet. So I will. I'll talk a little bit about what I want to be. So, I have some things I'm not going to read out, of course, but there are a few things that I'm interested in doing this year. And so this is what I have written. I want to become a healthier person, because one of the things that bugs me when I'm recording the videos is that I have a lot of spots, and that's because I eat really badly. I need to sort the diet. I could probably do this really quickly. It's just a matter of getting that sorted out. That's a short-term goal. I could probably achieve that in a month. I could get back into the habits of living a healthy life. Just doing all of that stuff. Get back into that after lockdown. That's something that is there on my list of things to do. Another thing that I want to do is to, become a man of prayer. Because ultimately, God says that through prayer we can achieve anything. We need it, especially that we need it to be a saint. We need to be saints. And I don't see any routes to being a saint without prayer. So if I become a man of prayer, then the sanctity is more assured. That's something that I view as important. Another one as well, we'll talk about more long-term ones. I want to become a proper theologian, like someone who doesn't necessarily have a degree in theology. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to do that. But someone who is well versed in such things, and that requires a lot of complicated work. That requires fluency in multiple languages. That requires, a knowledge of theology across the entire, of course, Catholic tradition, but also to a degree other traditions as well. I'm speaking in an academic context here. I'm not speaking like in terms of, some people will speak of theology as if it's like a personal experience of God. But that's not what I mean here. So this would be in 5 years, and in that time, ideally, I would learn a few languages. I'd learn, what was it, the ones I know? I noted down Koine Greek, but there'll probably be patristic as well. Hebrew, Latin, German, French, and Italian. Right, so that's 6 languages right there in 5 years. I think that's probably achievable. That's and of course, going over the fathers and going through the theologians across each century from the beginning through to the end. So that's another thing. Another one is philosopher. Hoping to get confirmed this year, Thexton says. Yeah, that's something I really need to do. I've been procrastinating on it a lot. Another one is to become more philosophical, like to have a better sense of the philosophical world, because last year what I did was I did something kind of stupid in retrospect. I made this big, long, year-long reading list for the Platonists. And this was basically Plato divided up into sections that I'd read each day for around half an hour. And what it ended up in me doing was me mindlessly reading a lot of useless Plato. Because a lot of it is just stuff that I didn't really find very useful. And the stuff that was useful, my brain sort of coasted over. So I'd need to be a bit more, maybe proactive. Maybe proactive's a buzzword. Like more sane, maybe in my planning of philosophy reading. But really, the crux of being a philosopher is just being able to perceive the world as it actually is. So this would be, just getting a better sense of the world, going out and experiencing things. Something that I haven't been able to do in lockdown very much. Just go out and sort those things out. What else have I got besides that? I kind of want to turn I want to bring back an online business, because the thing is that Renaissance Man was pretty. I don't know why I keep taking my glasses off. I think it's just like a habit. Speak of the devil. One of the things I also would quite like to do is to rebuild internet business stuff, because I was making a lot of money off of YouTube at one point. I was making, just over $400 a month through Renaissance Man when it was in its peak. So, going through and just rebuilding like a sensible brand. Thankfully I've got my girlfriend behind me very much on that. In fact, actually right now as we speak, I know someone asked on Discord where the video to Academic Agent and Sargon is, and it's actually she's actually editing my video as we speak. Like, I did an editing run, but she thought that she could add a lot to it, and so I gave it to her, and she's working through it, and she's doing a really, really good job. So that's where the AA Sargon video is, for those who are in the know. For those who aren't, basically, AA Sargon and Charlemagne did a stream the other day where they talked about Catholicism, well, not Catholicism, just Christianity generally as being a religion for effeminate people. They were quite strong in their language, and I think it comes from a place of ignorance. And I think that some of the views expressed regarding certain figures in the traditional movement were false, to put it mildly. And so I might do something calling out them later, but not just yet. I mean, you see, there's part of my guts that says that I should call out the likes of Vigano for what he's doing, but I don't really know if there's much use to that, since someone like Michael Lofton is doing just a superior job because he's frankly better educated than I am. I don't think I'm really suited to a similar kind of content to what Michael does, and I think he does it particularly well as it is. But there's a gut feel there. A Crown of 12 Stars says, one of my goals is to finish reading the entire Bible. I'm going through the Ascension Bible in a year. I think that is. Bible in a year. Once I'm finished, I plan to start your version you posted on the Discord. Cool. Yeah, like, so those who don't know, I might post a link to it in the description if I can do that. I posted it on Discord. I made this Bible in a year thing. I don't know if you can see it very well. So, basically, you have 6 sections of the Old and New Testaments. You have the first 5 books. You have the historical, prophetic, and wisdom books. Those 4 categories for the Old Testament, and then you've got 2 separate ones for the New Testament, the epistles and everything else. And the idea is that you go through a chapter a day, and this will take you. I mean, if you're reading it, it's just regular text, but I think with something like the Dewey Reams, it's very hard. It will take you around about 15 minutes to do, a little under that, a little over that even. I think most people will probably take more like half an hour, but it's still quite a short task. And the idea behind this isn't to establish your knowledge of the scriptures. Like, you should get a regular Bible in a year plan, like the Ascension one, if you want to do that. The idea for this is that you're reading the Bible in a kind of a, like, to use a complicated, like, reading it all at once so that you can see all the typologies playing together in real time. I don't know how effective it's actually going to be in my case. This is experimental. So far, I've done it once, and it feels a little bit strange flicking between all these different books, but hopefully it's something I'll get used to. George Washington says that he's read the entire Quran, but he's yet to read the entire Bible. The Bible is a much bigger book than the Quran. Actually, I was thinking of going through the Quran, right? So this is the Quran. This is about, I think it's 400-500 pages. Let's actually say. Yeah, I guess these are just additional things. It's like 530, 540 pages. This is a Catholic Bible. This also includes some encyclicals as well. I'm not sure if they count the numbers on it, but it's a lot bigger. The Quran is about the size of the New Testament, I've heard. And, of course, the Catholic Old Testament has, well, maybe, I don't know, twice the books, maybe, of the New Testament. The New Testament has, 27? And the Old has a bunch more. Right? So you have this imbalance. Although, I am considering reading the Quran, actually, because I think it's necessary to understand how the Muslims think, and I think it might be quite interesting to read this as kind of a Christian apocrypha, because that's basically what the Quran is. I don't view Islam, and as far as I understand, a lot of theologians don't view Islam as anything besides kind of an amalgamation of Christological heresies. Right? So they still have Christ, but they misunderstand him. And I think that having a grasp of the Quran and having a grasp of the traditions which interpret it could be quite useful, at least for me. But I think that for the majority of, well, for people who aren't very well catechized, and I do mean catechized, they should be reading the catechism first and, properly practicing prayer, because the Quran, although it's very obviously historically false, could lead you astray. Right? Because a lot of faith isn't just intellectual, and you've got to be bloody careful. Like, there's a reason why 1.6 billion people are Muslims, even though it's transparently historically wrong. Okay, let's see. Sorry, someone just... some guy over Discord, I think, messaged me a question, but he deleted it. Let's see. Which type of historian do you not trust? I think some medievalists have a weird perspectives on the Middle Ages, and they place modern values on it. Like, you see, I don't trust the kind of historian who will sort of astroturf, I don't know what that even means, but like sort of cover over. Like, they'll read an ancient text and they'll say, oh, this couldn't happen for X modern reason. Or these people who try to make history a science rather than art. Because this is one of the things that poisons history, I think. this scientificization. I don't know. I'm going to invent a word, right? This transformation into something which is ultimately, I think, the evaluation of human opinions, or in the case of Scripture, divine ones, and their consideration with physical evidence. And it's instead changed into this weird thing where, we're going to take carbon dates of each thing, and we're going to rely on that over the historical accounts. Whereas I think the accounts are of probably superior value, but that's more because I have an inherent. This is because I have an inherent distrust of science, because I know that a lot of places in science, not specifically things like carbon dating, I can't comment on that, but I know in things like social sciences that there are serious, very obvious issues that people don't address. And I also know that we are... I think that... how do I put this? I think that certainly modern history should be taken with a pinch of salt. I think that a lot of the historians are operating with a philosophical worldview that doesn't make sense of reality, but at the same time, you shouldn't completely ignore them, right? Like, some of them are quite interesting. This actually, yes, has water in it. Yeah. But yeah, just like, be aware of the sort of historian who will try and weave in his philosophical assumptions when he's reading history, right? I mean, it's impossible to do that, not to do that even, but I think people should be wary of that, because ultimately, before you interpret historical fact, you need to have a philosophical worldview there, and acknowledging that is not only going to make a historian more useful to you, because if you know a historian's mind, you know how he's interpreting things, and his failings and such, but also so you don't fall into the errors that he does. If he has this Marxist view of history where everything is material, physical forces, right? That's false, because the human mind is itself non-physical, and that's the thing making the economic decisions. And so when you're reading a Marxist historian, you should acknowledge that he's missing a gigantic piece of the pie out. Right? That would be my view anyway. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Let's see if there are other questions. I'm sure that there were knights who ignored the cult. Yeah, of course there were. Humanity Galactica, you tagged me and you didn't send a question across. Have you read the entire Quran? No, I haven't. I know that there are parts of it which are just blatantly historically false, like the assumption that Jesus wasn't crucified when the entire first century is basically is in fact entirely unanimous on this, as far as I know. And I mean there are all kinds of things that you could pick at the Quran for, as far as I know. How true these things are, I don't know. But at the same time, I remember that we are around people who believe this very strongly. They are going to be an increasingly bigger audience to serve. And to be honest, thank God for that, because they're better than secular people. And so in order to evangelize properly to them, we need to understand their texts. In fact, one of the big things that happened in the Middle Ages is that you'd have translators of the Quran in medieval Europe. You've got Nicholas of Cusa is one that springs to mind, and there are a bunch of others as well. I think there are 2 others, right? And this was primarily so people could understand the Quran, so they could, of course, interact with Muslims. But of course, if you're going to be doing this for apologetic purposes, this isn't sufficient, because you need this whole oral tradition alongside it in order to interpret it. You need to understand the different schools of jurisprudence, of theology. Like, Islam is a very wide tent. You have, in some places, these weird pantheists. You have in other places, just classical theists, like a lot of Christians. It's not nearly as straightforward as I just read the Quran and Muhammad married a 12-year-old or married a 9-year-old, right? Like, treating it like that is insulting, I think, because there's a massive, wide tradition in Islam that can be used in a way that doesn't offend Muslims. and it doesn't even have to rely on explicitly contradicting their scriptures as well. Like, I knew a woman who was once a Muslim, and one of the things that struck her about Christianity was that there were such virtuous people before the Quran was written. And I think that a lot of the Muslim mindset, in fact I've been told explicitly by an ex-Muslim this, a lot of the Muslim mindset, the serious Muslim mindset, isn't so much about the historical truth of the book as it is about the virtue that it generates. And, I mean, you can go through the Christian tradition, you can fish out like great numbers of saints, and you can say, we have these people, right, and they were extremely virtuous, they did miracles, etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's in there, George Washington. I've heard that it's very strange in its historical assumptions, to put it mildly. There are a lot of problems with it historically, but if it's not going to work, if those arguments aren't going to work, then they aren't going to work, right? And you have to, in a sense, become all things to all men. And some people just don't listen to historical fact. Some people don't listen to philosophical argumentation. A lot of people will listen to reasoning from virtue. That's something that works, and a lot of people will reason from beauty and stuff like this as well. Have I interacted with Mormons? Yes, I actually have. I have discussed things with Mormons in the past. Some better than others. I don't understand why they actually believe the way they do. Like one of the things. This is a logical problem with Mormonism, right? So they believe in this great apostasy that happens, I think, after the death of the last apostle, and then they will rely on a New Testament canon that comes about at the very earliest, something like 80 years after their great apostasy. I think that the first instance of the New Testament canon is found in Irenaeus of Lyon, and that's like well after you've got. I mean, you have a very obvious, very strong papacy. Maybe not to the extent that we have now per se, but you have quite a strong view of the papacy present in Irenaeus. You have Trinitarianism in Tertullian around this time. You have the Eucharist. You have obey your bishop, yelled very loudly, and they'll say, I suspect a lot of these Mormons will say, oh, this is a sign of the great apostasy, but then they will take the biblical canon from them, and it's not very consistent. And of course, there are the very obvious problems with Joseph Smith as well. Have you ever read Father Brown? No, I haven't. The majority of the comparing the unbelievers to truly proper. I don't know. I mean, I flicked through the Quran a little bit, and it does read like a little bit like I'll present my opinion when I think it's prudent to do so, and when I've read the whole thing. Granted, this isn't a very good translation that I have in my hand. I'm told that there are much better translations, but it's what I have in my hand, so it's what I'm going to read, I think. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding between Muslims and Christians, and it's not helped by the fact that there's constant animosity online between the various apologists, like constant drama, and nobody bloody helps. Nobody helps anything. Like I would rather Muslims be Muslim than they become atheist. I would much rather, overwhelmingly. I mean, I would rather they become, they stay Muslim than they become, atheists or secular people. Or, to be honest, renouncing their Eastern culture. This is something that they really shouldn't do, like this thrusting of enlightened Western values on Middle Eastern people who do not want them, do not run their societies in line with them, and would not benefit from them, because they're against natural law, right? This is something that I despise, when people deal with Islam, and they will come at it with this kind of view. I mean, it's disgusting. Like, if you're going to approach Islam, Don't approach it with a mind to culturally educating them or something. You should approach it with a mind to, this is a serious religious tradition. It has gaping holes in it historically. The believers don't generally care. You need to convince them otherwise. That's my very inexperienced view of Islam. And I suspect that, you could do a similar thing. Could you do a similar thing with Judaism? Like Judaism, I know more about, right? It's more of a mess than Islam. Frankly, there's no reason. There's no reason to believe the Messiah hasn't come. Like, Judaism is unfulfillable at this point. Like, there is no one besides Christ who could fulfill it anyway. Like, you can read Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, and you can see this. The Christ is time bound, and you can see this from the context of the chapter, and you can see that this terminates in the first half of the 1st century AD. There's no way that you could have a Messiah outside of that time, and nobody else fits this except for Jesus. There would be no... you could look at the messianic pretenders, there's one who came up from Egypt, there's one called Theudas. These people were killed by the Romans and didn't rise from the dead. They didn't affirm the resurrection of the dead, as you see in books like Hosea. You don't have any of them being born in Bethlehem, as far as I know. You don't have any of them, of course, rising from the dead. You don't have any of them committing instantaneous miracles 2,000 years after they've ascended. One of the greatest testimonies to Christianity is the contemporary miracles. You do not have the likes of Padre Pio, a man who had constantly bleeding wounds in his hands for 50 years, and have them heal, as he dies, almost immediately, without there being some sort of supernatural influence. And this isn't just... I don't think it's down to demons, right? Because demons don't have the power in themselves to heal things instantly, because they can't create. And this is the distinction between miracles in the in the Old Testament and in the Christian era. The Christian miracles are genuine healings. I don't mean just he's got a flu and then the demon comes out. I mean someone has lost a hand and it grows back. Someone is risen from the dead. Someone who's been dead for a long time at the direct, immediate command of somebody. The stigmata healing on the corpse of Saint Padre Pio. Right, stuff like this, right? These are miracles that only God could do. Other religions have their own miracles, but they never fit this category, as far as I know. Okay, more chats. What is your view on Aristotle? I like his rhetoric. I've been reading the rhetoric. I was reading it. I think that he's a very interesting person. I think he has some errors, though. That's a very generic view, but that's what I think. I think it's easier to convert an atheist than a Muslim, because the family background and culture Islam exists to hinder Muslims from converting, as you may be aware. Yes, that's true. But I would say that to some extent that's also true of atheists, because atheists are a lot of atheists just think they're smarter than the Old and New Testament. A lot of them think that the Christians are just stupid, and there are a lot of Muslims. I suspect there are a lot of Muslims who think this as well. They'll think lol. They think there are 3 gods, right? I don't think atheism. Maybe atheism is. I don't know. Perhaps it is. Yeah, maybe it is. But at the same time, I do think that Islam is more in line with natural law. Humanity Galactica asks, do you think secularism is doomed? Yes, because they can't produce children. There will be... I reckon in 3 centuries, there will be almost no secularism. I think that this country, the UK, will be a country kind of like Lebanon, where there will be a large contingent of Muslims, probably mostly Sunni. You will have a large contingent of Catholics, and there may be little groups of... I don't know if the Protestantism will even exist, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were little groups of Protestants, and little groups of Shia Muslims as well, and of course other traditions mingled in. But I think that secularism will be dead in 2 centuries. They can't produce the children, and it's incoherent. Atheists don't get beaten up or killed for converting. Depends where you are. I'm sure that they do in other places. Like, there is anti-atheist violence around the world. So, what other chat questions are there? How long have we been going for? Let's have a look. We have been going for 40 minutes. Okay. Let's see if there's anything through Discord. Someone asked about the AA video on Discord. Let's see. Actually, you know, we could talk about other interesting other things as well, like what sorts of books are you guys thinking of reading this year? So, like, I'm gonna finish off this Therese of Lisieux's autobiography of Saint Therese. I need to. My priest has asked me to, and I've kind of been slacking on it. I'm probably going to go through Saint Augustine. There's a volume in my bag there. You can't see it. There's Irenaeus Against Heresies. That's another one he's asked me to finish. And then I'm going to go through Origen, who was another 3rd century. I don't want to call him a father. I'll call him Christian writer. Who's very, very important, but very, very, very wrong. That feeling when no editing GF. I'd recommend reading Father Brown. I've never really been into fiction, right? Like, I see a lot of people in Catholic spheres online, like, massively upping Lord of the Rings, and maybe I could read that. But I've never really gotten into it. I guess I'm just a weird person. Like, there are some books that I don't mind that are fiction. Like, I really enjoyed Father Elijah and Elijah in Jerusalem by Michael O'Brien. Those were 2 interesting books. I consumed those. I consumed Father Elijah, which was 600 pages in 3 days. Right, it was really good. It was a real serious book. That's one of the things. That's something I might go over. I might go over some fiction. I doubt it, actually, when I think about it. I think I'll read philosophy and theology. There's part of me that wants to do an entire sort of ethnographic study of the UK, because I think it's necessary, because I don't even know the culture that I live in. And how can I raise children in that culture if I don't know where the lay of the land is? I think that's kind of sad to admit, but it's true. I don't know what the UK even is. I don't know what the cultural lines are. I don't know if there's a real culture. I guess I'm just imbibed in it. Charlie Adams asks, recommend some wholesome activities for us guys to do this year. Stay in shape outside of the gym. You know, calisthenics, buy yourself a power rack and a bar. You know, because the thing that I don't like about gyms is that, I think that it's near occasion to various things. I think that it can... Actually, there was actually a person I knew in my university parish who said he didn't go to the gym because it encouraged vanity. And I can see his point of view. But I do think that physical exercise is really important, and it's something that I slack on. Right? So I think that's something that would be good. Write poetry. Write music. Write hymns. You know? Just sit and, you know, express yourself in that way. That's something that you could do. You know, actually, Mongoose Man mentions Tolkien Day is coming up in 2 days, and maybe that would be a great way to get into Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. The thing is that I'm not sure how much I actually want to be associated with the dissident right, because I mean, in my views, I suppose I would be considered right-wing, but I'm not sure I really want to be that associated with politics for a few reasons. Like, first of all, I don't want to get my name dragged through the mud for a cause that I think is basically dead. Second of all, I don't agree with a lot of the assumptions of a lot of the figures there. Hey, True Trad. What else? Like, I just see... Like, I was looking at this video by Academic Agent and Sargon where they were talking about the treatment of Christianity and reading some of the assumptions that Academic Agent made on Twitter, and I don't want to be associated with such views. I think that they are... I don't understand why these people are even right-wing. It seems like... maybe I'm wrong. It seems like these people are pursuing an entirely different society than I want to live in. Right? Like, you have a lot of these different... these dissident movements, like a patriotic alternative. And frankly, I would rather vote for the Tories than I would vote for patriotic alternative. I think they would be dangerous for this country. And I don't want to have any of the people that I love involved with any such people either. Like, I don't want anything to do with them. And to be honest, I want increasingly less to do with even, like, or any of the political parties, really, with the exception of the one that I'm in. I think that these people have diametrically opposed views to mine. I don't think that they are... I don't think that... Actually, maybe the centre parties are better, besides maybe Labour, right? But I don't think they're pursuing the good of the country. I don't want to be associated with them. I don't want to be associated... Yeah, Tory boy, yeah. Like, I know AA calls people that, but, like, I'm not a Tory. I was associated with Tories at one point, but I'm not a Tory. I just think that dissident right politics is cancerous at this point, a lot of it. I think that I think that there needs to be a serious re-evaluation. I think that people should leave the movement as soon as possible. I think they are wasting their time discussing elite theory and Moldbug and Carlyle, when really what they could be doing is something constructive, more constructive rather. Like, I think that there is some good to be gained. Like looking at the countries that they live in, understanding the people that they are trying to serve. Because that's what politics is there for, to serve the people. And then from there, reasoning, rather than just reading philosophy for its own sake. And I actually, there was a guy called House of Commons, who I do disagree with quite strongly on his views. But I think that he was right when he was, saying, the dissident right is very... I wouldn't watch his videos as well, there's swearing occasionally. And there's also sometimes thumbnails that are a bit provocative. I'd avoid the channel for that reason. Like, they are reading, they're disconnected from, they need to be more connected with the reality around them. And I don't see that happening. I see, just reading people like a Bronze Age, Bronze Age mindset, right? Don't read that book. It's like motivation fuel. You can get that out of pretty much anyone, right? It's motivation fuel with 19th century scripture scholarship at points, and 19th century philosophy, and a view of life that is ultimately pointless, I think. It's been a few years since I've read it, but I went over it about half a dozen times on audio tape. I would, and embracing this kind of warrior hero mindset just doesn't work. It never works. It doesn't exist. Because this expansionistic view of reality, where you're constantly just grabbing more and more exterior to you, that leads to pride, that leads to you abusing your power, misperceiving situations, and ultimately destroys the structure of the society, if you make this your primary aim. This isn't to say, of course, that conquerors can't be morally good people. We have examples of this. King David. I mean, Jesus, I suppose, would be an obvious example of this. But conquest for its own sake is a heroic ideal. That just destroys character. I understand entirely the emphasis on the heroic. Of course I do. I mean, much of my life is just driven by a desire to be heroic. But I don't think that doing it in this manner of conquest and gym and scoops of whey protein is going to work. It doesn't work. Okay, I've gone through... Yeah, I've read Bronze Age Mindset half a dozen times in Mongoose Man. Okay. Well, listen through it. Wist asks, do you know Latin? I know some. I'm able to translate basic stuff. If so, would you have any tips for learning it? I would have a grammar book there. I wouldn't take it seriously. I wouldn't just study out of it, don't take a wee lock and just read through it and do that. What you want to be doing is consuming as much Latin that you can read as possible. So something like Lingua Latina per se illustrata by Hans Orberg would be a decent start. If you can get your hands on a Vulgate, if you like reading the Bible in other languages, that would be another good start. The Patrologia Latina is available online for free through a channel called Documenta Catholica Omnia. I'll type that in the chat. Documenta Catholica Omnia, I think it is. Maybe Catholica Omnia. And, you know, just go through and translate things. Read as much as possible. Comprehensible input is the factor when it comes to learning languages. And, you know, you won't even have to worry about things like declension tables if you read enough Latin. I've used part of the Dowling method. That was really effective. That was basically just writing out the declensions over and over again on a piece of paper. But, you know, it's you will realise instinctually how the text reads when you read enough Latin. Okay, there was a bunch of other questions above. I actually read Charlie Adams' question on wholesome activities because that was just one that I thought would be quite nice. Someone could say that secular thinking spreads mimetically, not genetically, so doomed just due to lack of production. Yeah, I mean, it's not true. Hammer of God, have you read Silence? No, I haven't read Silence. I know a guy that... I think I know a guy that did. Actually, that was all the questions up there, so I'll just go back down to the bottom. Explain this culture's need to eroticize same-sex friendships. I think it's because people in the West are so obsessed with sex that they can't get it out of their mind, right? Like, it's a very... I mean, it's a very loved aspect of the society. It's something that people do implicitly because of how poisoned people are with lust. And so I think it's more pronounced for some groups more than others. And I can see people reading in that because of their own habits into other perfectly, perfectly fine friendships. People are just obsessed with sex. I think that if there's going to be a positive change in the country, it's going to need to start with a proper evaluation of what sex actually is. How would you go about communicating with atheists who are feeling suicidal? I felt quite inadequate talking about the sensitive topic. Ask them why they feel suicidal. When you're evangelizing to a person, you don't always have to use logical arguments. What was it St. Francis of Assisi said? Something like, preach the gospel and only when necessary use words. I think of something like this. I think that, like, these author bros, right, for example, like, this sort of internet orthodox type, these people aren't interested in, the formula of Hormisdas, or Pope Agatho, or the declarations of, what was this? Was it third Constantinople? I think it'd be third Constantinople. They're not interested in implications in the fathers. They're interested in being based. And with those sorts of people, you need to appeal to their will. Very few people are interested in the intellect when it comes to, picking something. Like, even I'm not really. Like, a lot of what preceded my own conversion was listening to a lot of chant and really liking it, right? The key to winning a lot of people over, of course, have the truth there, because the truth is, of course, important. You don't want to be presenting people with false arguments. But these pointless debates online about, apostolic succession, like, they're needed at a certain point. People, of course, have logical reasons, and they should never convert for just because it's based or pretty. But appealing to the will is very important as well. Like, it's kind of like how you read some of the atheists and some of the pagans, and they're like, God is has, like, these horrible moral characteristics. And it's like, you could convince these people that God were real, but they hate God, and so they won't follow the God anyway. You need to appeal to their will, and you need to remove the impediments to the will, as well as to the intellect. And sometimes, you reach the will through the intellect, and you sometimes reach the intellect through, I don't know if you could reach it through the will, but, you have to present something to the person, ultimately, and that's going to be processed by their mind. But really, appealing to what they want, as well, is important. Like, with suicidal people, discuss why they're feeling that way, and work in what you know from the Catholic spiritual tradition. Not explicit, worship of God necessarily. Of course, you're the judge, but working in the psychological insights. Like one of the things you will notice at times that some of the stuff. Actually, you know what? I'm not sure, but you'll see some interesting psychological tricks in the Fathers. Not for people that you're trying to convert, of course, but for dealing with issues that would probably pertain to mental health. Do you think China could become Catholic? Of course, I could. I mean, they're human beings. I mean, in the future, in the near future, I don't know. I don't know enough. So do you believe that ideology is like crippled religion, like Jordan Peterson? I think some ideologies are. I think communism is. I think communism is an Abrahamic heresy, and I think that I'm not sure I'd say that National Socialism is. National Socialism is a weird beast. A weird beast. But things like I mean, I'm not sure that I could go. I don't know if I could go that far if he means just political policies, but I think that there is a tendency to place the political where the religion is. Yeah, reread The Wind in the Willows. That's based, George. Wholesome Chug 100. Which philosophers would you be best to avoid? Well, anyone you can't deal with. Like, if you're not catechized in the faith, read the Catechism. Like, I never finished the Catechism. I'm going through that right now, and I hope I'll finish it in a couple of weeks. You see, there's different views, I think, amongst the saints, and two of them I've been trying to reconcile over the last couple of months is the view of Saint Alphonsus Liguori, who's very much like, don't read bad books. Of course he'll quote from certain among them because he has the ability to resist them. But he'll say to people like, avoid certain books because it will destroy people's moral character. But at the same time, you have people like Saint Basil the Great, who says, feel free to read the ancient Greeks. Go through and find what's good in them. And I think that there needs to be, and this is my opinion, I don't know, I might be well wrong. Actually I won't state it because I'm not sure. I think it's something that needs more digging into, because I think on one hand, God created the world, and that religions, other religions besides ours and other philosophical systems do have their insights. On the other hand, I think that those insights can be weaponized, and I think they can be mixed in with error. And that's my kind of quandary, and I haven't really been able to work it out myself. It's a difficult thing to work out. Man, I do need the gym. I'm just looking at my chin in the camera. What are your goals in terms of fitness? I actually haven't really given it much thought. I know that I want to get into martial arts properly. I've never done that before. There was part of me that wanted to do more running, but then I think, it could be frosty one day, and then I'd have to break the habit for a day, which is a really stupid reason. I don't know. Maybe I'll give that some thought. I think I need to. But I know that there are some there, but largely it would be towards a kind of a more functional fitness, like going and deadlifting 600 pounds or 300 kilos or something like that. That's 280, I think. No, it wouldn't be. It would be 260. In any case, right? Like that isn't on the memo. Like there's no point to having that kind of strength necessarily. Having functional cardiovascular health and some strength is what's important. What are your thoughts on drugs being used to treat behavioural problems like depression and ADHD? I am no expert. I am considering putting together a book of quotations from the scriptures and from the church fathers to alleviate such symptoms where I think they're relevant. Particularly symptoms of acedia, which is quite similar to depression, which is like this kind of sluggish hatred of good things that some of you might feel. I think that sound wisdom and proper living could correct a lot of the problems with depression and ADHD they're experienced. Whether it can cure it or not, I don't know, because I think that's a case-by-case thing first and foremost, and second of all, a lot of the time it's literally wired into the person. Would you say that fascism is also an Abrahamic heresy like communism is? I don't like fascism because it breaks the principle of subsidiarity. At least in Mussolini's case, I think. Certainly in the leader of Germany's case. Because Mussolini says something along the lines of all needs to be subservient to the state, whereas it really should be family first, in my view. What was was it Abrahamic heresy? Might be. I mean, actually, I suppose it kind of is, because it comes out of socialism, doesn't it? How do we reverse the sexualized culture in society? You tell people why it's wrong and why it's destroying them. That will get a sizable chunk of people, I think, to drop off. Not all, certainly not a majority. Other than that, you provide them reasons why the chaste life is beautiful, and make it manifest in front of them through your own life. You make it very clear to them as well that it's because you're chaste that you're living a good life as well. Yeah, I mean, that's my view. I don't think it's a very easy thing to do. I think, of course, you could ban pornography, and it would be good if they did. But just doing that isn't going to be enough. You'd have to do things like, I think, punish adultery as well. You'd need to close nightclubs. You would need to ban contraception. I mean, a lot of these things are a lot of these things I think are natural law. Like, I don't see contraception being permissible in the natural law, so I think that the state could do that. Pornography, similar reasoning. Divorce and adultery, maybe. I think you could, if you couldn't do it with the state, and I think I'm not sure on that one. I think if you were to increase a societal stigma against it, that would be something. What else could you do? You could fine companies for putting scantily clad women on their adverts. That would be another thing. You could... a lot of pop music nowadays, you could just ban it. Like, these are, of course, provisional things. I have no idea how you get this in power, because I probably just wound up about 95% of people in my generation just by saying these things. That's just like as it is. Norma Cameron asks, "Hey, bro, have you read The Triumph of Christianity by Bart Ehrman?" Pretty good, but I don't like Bart Ehrman. I don't think he's a good scholar. I don't think his views of was he the one that argued that Jesus wasn't God? At least in the Synoptics. I don't know, really silly man in that view. What's your opinion on Carl Schmidt and his concept of friend and enemy? I don't have any particular views on Carl Schmidt. The friend-enemy distinction, I mean, I think that should be applied to demons and not to people. Like, demons have already fallen. Human beings haven't. You should treat human beings as friends to the greatest extent that you can, but of course, ensure your own, just be... Like, you're going to have in-group preference, I suppose, but, not getting bloody obsessed with it like some people do. Like this whole, it seems like it's almost like in-group preference for in-group preference's sake. Like, who, like, this is going to sound like a controversial question, but really, who cares? Like, what is the point of a nation existing if it doesn't do good? What is the point of, white people or my people existing if they're not doing good things? I don't see it being good. I don't see why. Maybe how do I phrase this in a way that doesn't wind everyone up? Okay, so the existence of people is good, right? An existence of a particular ethnic group is good, just by virtue of existence. But the human beings in that group have wills that are to be directed towards the good. That is their entire point of existing. God created us to love him. Now, if a group fails in this task, it's violating its own purpose. And so it follows that there are going to be problems. Do they deserve to be destroyed? I don't know. I certainly think that they deserve chastisement. The people of Israel and the people of Judah suffered that. Israel was completely wiped off the map in the Bible. Judah suffered something similar. And so I see... I think that before anyone considers saving the English people, or the American people, or the Indian people, or any other people, they should consider, are they actually doing good things? Like, there should be a preference for goods that are superior to existence before we talk about the existence of any particular group, because ultimately the transcendent goods are more important than those. Are nightclubs inherently bad? In their modern states and how I've experienced them, yes, definitely. Do I have a problem with dancing per se? No. Do I think most dancing is bad? I think a lot of it, where it's very close and it's the wrong context, yes. I think the most modern music is a violence to the mind. I think that the lyrics are enough to destroy any morality in many cases, especially with the way that the music is written alongside it. I think that they need to be very, very restructured, and also the association with alcohol. Like, you don't go to a nightclub in Britain without being drunk first, or at least tipsy. In fact, even like the whole, like, I've worked in a nightclub as well, so I know what they're like. Like, the whole establishment of nightclubs, as it stands, are abysmal, and I would support banning them as they stand currently. That doesn't mean that I think that pubs are bad. That doesn't mean that I think that socialising is bad. But I do think that nightclubs as they currently stand are places that ought to be dealt with. Bringing back the Hays Code. Never heard of the Hays Code. Do you think there was really was a worldwide flood? I don't know. I know that the flood is a very, very widespread idea. I think I'm not actually sure what the church says on it. Some people would say that it's implied in scripture very strongly, but I'm just going to withhold my opinion because I don't know. Norma Cameron asks, well, if you don't approve of Bart Ehrman, then what book is good is a good novice theology textbook? Well, let me grab it for you. This is unironically incredible. I sort of thought Snoresville when I looked at it. I thought, oh, it would just be like, silly stuff, but this is extremely deep. It even addresses issues like once saved, always saved. There's a bit on the problem of evil that I read today. What else does it address? It addresses like a lot of things. Read this. Just read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and then worry about other things later on. How would you... Anarcho Rain asks, how would you differentiate between high and low culture? I think the former makes you smarter and more moral. The other encourages people to become degenerate morons. I don't think there needs to be... I don't think that's a good distinction. I think that you can have a low culture for normal people, maybe not normal people, but lower class people that also encourages virtue. You don't have to be highfalutin to encourage virtue. You have it. You could make folk songs about it. You could make you could write poetry for just normal people. You don't have to be highfalutin theology or philosophy in order to, or even literature to preach a good message. It can be simple. And so I say that the distinction between high and low culture is that high culture serves a more intellective function, whereas low culture serves something a little bit more ephemeral, maybe. Any advice for reducing alcohol consumption? Can't go out anymore without getting battered. We just answered your own question. Don't go out. Like, seriously, just, like, if you have friends that won't remain friends with you outside of a pub context, then dump them. Try and associate with friends in other ways, and just go cold turkey on alcohol, and get a spiritual director, and then discuss with him after a while what to do next. You want to avoid occasions of sin, and you do that by avoiding the bar. I think people place too much emphasis on family, like, if the birth rates are declining or whatever, why should we care? Well, because that destroys the state. Like, Anicedemus, you don't have a country without babies. You don't have a country without babies. As simple as that. So of course we should care about birth rates, but we should be concerned about doing the good with those. Like, there's no reason to... If a child is brought into the world and does nothing but evil, then it's just going to make the world a worse place. This doesn't mean we should abort kids, obviously, because that's evil in itself, but instead produce a culture that makes them good. And you can only do that with the survival of the state. And not to mention in the UK that it's actually abortion that is bringing us under a replacement rate. Like, without abortion, we would be around or maybe even above replacement rate, or at birth rate. I think it was like 2.1 without abortion. If we didn't have abortion, we would be fine. But abortion is reducing that. Where can I find good and virtuous friends? Mongoose Man, pray for them. Go to church, of course, but pray for them. Do you think the emphasis on family among conservatives is bad because it tends to ignore the immorality of individual souls and cares more about the species? Caring about the species in itself, like the species has a purpose, guys. Direct yourselves towards it. We survived with 95% less people. Yeah, but, like, that was then and this is now. Was there a question I missed? Someone said bruh. I don't even know what you meant bruh about, YouTube watching. Let's see. Anarcho-Reign, low culture is not the same as popular culture. Mainstream does not have to be degenerate. Yeah, I'm disagreeing with you. I think that what you're saying... I think maybe what I'm doing is I'm reading what you're saying is low culture as popular culture. Because popular culture as it stands right now is that. But low culture doesn't have to be. That's what I'm saying. But this is just my opinion. I don't think that the way that the world is being depopulated is moral, though. Like, just constant abortion, contraception, just dysgenic mindsets, disgusting stuff like that. Like, that needs to end. And if we keep expanding until we've got 20 billion people, then so be it. God willing. You wouldn't have the kids without God willing it, so it must be fine. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. You should read the Hays Code when you have time. Okay, I'll take a look at some point. Anyway, we've been going for quite a while. I think we've been going for an hour and a half, so I'm going to leave it here. I really appreciate everyone watching, and I hope that you found it useful. Bye-bye.